Actually, it hurt. Wow. Who'd have thought? Paddle hurts. Um, Hi everyone. My name's Archon and welcome to Barbaric Leather. Today's video, our first video, is going to be this, a simple basic pattern. Just a quick little backstory here. I got into leather crafting a couple years ago. I went to the Renaissance Fair. I loved all the costumes and the outfits everyone was wearing. I felt like I was at home. And I went into a booth to buy something. I wanted to buy some leather bracers or something, if I remember correctly. And I found a simple pair that I liked and was like, yeah, I think I'm going to get these. So I saw the price. And I went, nope, I can't justify spending that money right now. Not on this. And I thought to myself, I bet I could make that. Doesn't look that hard. I'm relatively crafty, so I wonder if I could. As it turns out, I can. Leather is very easy medium to learn. It's pretty forgiving. There are a ton of videos online, case in point the one you're watching right now. That's just a phenomenal craft. So that's where I started out, was with that whole making armor, making fantasy stuff. And then as I dove more deeply into the kink community, I started to find paddles and the fact leather in the kink community. So I then started to blend my two kind of passions, my passion for leather and fantasy with my passion for kink. And where I came with is where I am now. I make a lot of fetish stuff, a lot of paddles, a lot of restraints, chokers, collars, stuff like that. Like just, fun stuff. So I thought maybe there would be a couple people out there who would want to see how to make these. I didn't find any real videos. I found a couple, but there wasn't a whole lot of videos on making stuff like this available when I started. I kind of had to just look at pictures online and use my experience to go, well, that's how I would redo it. And that's what I did. That's what we're going to do here. This is a basic paddle that, I mean, I call it the standard paddle. Every time you Google leather paddles, this design is the first one that pops up. So I felt fitting to start with that one. And basic XOXO, we're gonna go from design all the way through to the finished product. So stay tuned. First step with every project is going to be the design. I like to just grab some reference photos off of Google and then open up my sketchbook, start throwing some rough ideas out, getting a general idea of what I want, and then from there, I will flesh out a bigger and larger pattern. All right, next we're going to take that basic design and we are going to now make a pattern out of it. I like to use these manila envelopes. I got a whole bunch of them from Staples for a couple dollars. So I use these every time I need to make a rough pattern. Anything will work. You can use printer paper. You can use old cereal boxes is an old school trick I've heard a lot. But anything that you can use that's long enough to make one solid pattern. So another thing that I really like about this phase is we're still in the design phase, so we haven't committed to leather yet. I can still go through and I can make changes, and I'll usually do this once I've cut the pattern out. I'll go through and I will hold it, size it, see how it is, and then make some changes. One thing that I did not bring up earlier but should be stressed over and over again is sharp knife, a new blade, or stropped blade every single time. Just on a side note here, I did have a lot of fun making this pattern in Photoshop. And here for the video's purposes, I'm using the XOXO, but I do have another file which has several more explicit words. If that's what you're looking for, let me know in the comments and I can link it. Once our leather is dry, we're going to go ahead and tape the pattern down using masking tape. I like to use masking tape because it's pretty see-through, makes it easy to cut. Again, strop the blade, always strop it. We want to make sure that that knife is safe and sharp. One thing to keep in mind when you're cutting thick leather is to make multiple passes rather than to try to make your cuts in one deep pass. When you apply that much pressure to the leather with the knife, you really run the risk of that knife jumping or slipping and just something going wrong. So it's better to make several more shallow passes. One thing I like to do with my patterns is I like to go around and cut the pattern out first. So I will just go ahead and follow those cuts. Once you have a cut in, it's a lot easier to follow it and continue to make those second, third, fourth cut if you need. Now you can still very easily slip outside of that, so you still want to take your time, be careful. And just like that, with those final cuts, we have finished cutting out one of three pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of those pieces off camera and save you from sitting through that. So now that we have our pattern cut out, we are going to add the text to it. This will be the body side of it. First thing you're going to want to do is wet the leather. Now, I have asked this question and I have seen it asked multiple times. How much water do you put on the leather for this? The closest answer I have come up with over the years of me doing this is until it's right. And I know that's the worst possible answer, but it's really true. There's no set formula. It's just until it feels right. And the more you do this, the more you will kind of get an idea for it. We're only using this to transfer the text over. So I don't need it to be heavy. I just need it to be wet enough so that it can take the impression. And after I've coated it, what I'm going to do is let it set for a couple minutes. I probably should have let this one sit for a little bit longer, but I was slightly impatient. All right, so I taped the pattern down, and then I like to use a ballpoint pen. This is probably the easiest thing. You can use anything, pencil, and all if it's not too sharp. But I personally, I like the pen. You can really see where you've already gone, so it helps to not have to go over it multiple times. Um, just I like to do as straight a lines as possible. The leather can catch the tip of the pen, and if it does that, it will try to go a little off where you're going. So, if at all possible, try to keep straight lines or make fluid motions. While we're here, I'm going to take this opportunity to just add in a guide for myself. So I have a stitching groover here, and I don't have the grooving attachment in. What I do have is just a little marking attachment. So all I'm doing is just scoring the leather and giving myself a nice guide for when I go to add my stitching holes to try to keep them as straight as possible. This can always be a little bit of a nerve-wracking part, especially when you've already put in time to this spot and one slip of the knife can cause a lot of problems. One good thing about leather is that most mistakes can be fixed relatively easy, but you want to avoid it if at all possible. So again, when you're new at this, try to do straight lines as much as possible. One trick that I like to do with these is, if you notice, rather than making one solid cut, what I'm doing is I'm starting at the end, I'm making a partial cut, flipping the piece around, going to the other end, and making that second cut connect. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because of the way the blade is angled. If I were to try to just cut that straight through, I run the risk of the blade cutting past where I want to and giving it just this ugly, unprofessional cut. So to avoid that, what I'm going to do, and this will take longer, but it will lead to a much nicer project is just that I'm going to go one end a little bit, flip it, cut the other end, try to meet in the middle, just like I said, to ensure that I am limiting the risk of cutting outside of where I want. And magic, just like that, we have them all cut out. I went ahead and skipped that so you guys didn't have to sit through it. It does, like I said, take time when you're trying to make sure you're getting precise cuts. So stacked on top, this is what it should look like. We can already see the depth. All right, now let's give this leather some color. I like to use Fibing's Pro Dye. It's just the best that I have seen. I've tried a couple other brands, and the Pro Dye specifically from Fibing's is just premium. So I'm using their red here, and what we're doing right now is we're just doing the inlay piece. So this is going to be what's going to be behind the text. So I don't need to dye the whole piece. This will be sandwiched in between the other leather. So I just want to make sure that in that middle where the text is going to see through, I'm getting good coverage and a nice even coat. And if I take the piece that we cut out and lay it over on top, this is what it should start to look like. Next, we're going to go ahead and get the black on. So the top piece and then the back piece are both going to get covered. Again, this is Fibing's Pro Dye Black. I tried the United States Marine Corps one, and I prefer the Pro Black. So I have a huge tub of this. I use it probably way too often. So as we jump into gluing, one of the first things that I need to do is I need to mark out my text, because contact cement, I need to have glue on both sides. So I need to know where exactly to glue this. What I like to use is just a scratch all, kind of just go around, give myself that little outline. And then when I pull this piece of leather off, I'll be able to see and have a little line where to glue. You can use whatever glue you want. I like to use barge contact cement. To get in between the X and the O, the little gaps, I like to use these little, they're disposable paintbrushes I got off Amazon. A huge pack of 50 of them was a couple bucks or something like that. But I like to use that to get into the letters, and we're going to do that on both sides. Give this some time to dry, and once it's tacky, I'm going to go ahead and sandwich those two pieces together. Press on the edges. I want to make sure that I'm getting good contact. And once I press down, I am going to come in here with it's a ball peen hammer, but any hammer that's flat on one side, and I'm just going to tap down all over it. And this is just a secondary measure to make sure that I'm getting good adhesion on all spots throughout the whole project. All right, so our first bit of not leather specific tools or material here, corset boning. We need something in between the leather to kind of help stiffen the paddle. Otherwise, even with the three pieces of leather, the glue, and then the stitching, it's still going to be a little bit too floppy. I have found that corset boning is the best material to use. It gives just enough rigidity that makes it worthwhile, and it's not very expensive. Now, when I did this project, I had a whole pack of corset boning on order from Amazon, but of course it wasn't here. So enter my wife to the rescue, had a old corset that she doesn't use anymore, loaned it to me, and I went ahead and cut out the boning, cannibalized that just to get the pieces that we had, so I didn't have to wait another 2 days. So I'm taking it and I'm gonna wrap them in duct tape. This is just gonna keep them together. You can use whatever you want. Masking tape doesn't matter. Anything that'll just keep them together so they don't slide around. And I also wasn't sure about this one. Is it gonna stick? Contact cement, will it stick to duct tape? Found out it works Probably not the best, but it works enough for our purposes. So we're gonna slather some contact cement on the duct tape with the 3 pieces of boning, and those are 1/4 inch pieces, so we're about 3/4 inch wide. If you see on here, I did sandwich the bottom side in. It was a little bit too wide and gonna kind of just hit, so I sandwiched it just so that it gave a little bit more clearance. That way, when I come in with my stitching line, the corset boning will be in the middle. So once dry, we're going to go ahead, same thing, sandwich those two together, and then we're going to need to repeat the process. We're going to need to get contact cement here on these 2 pieces, and then on the back piece, allow that time to dry, sandwich them together, rinse and repeat. And then once both sides have contact cement, we've allowed sufficient time to dry. Both sides are now tacky. Sandwich them together. Same thing. Make sure we press down. I don't think I grabbed a recording of this, but I did go ahead and grab the hammer as well. And I just went ahead and banged along the edges just to make sure we had good adhesion. There's a number of ways you can do this. You have hole punches, you have diamond chisels, individual awls. For this, because of the thickness, I'm choosing to use a drill. And the only reason is because I don't want to punch these holes out 3 times each. Although, in hindsight, I probably will go ahead and add some stitching holes to the pattern just to try that again next time to see if it actually winds up saving me time. This is a lot faster, but it's not without its flaws. These holes don't come out perfect, but you live and learn. So again, it's the method that I chose. So went ahead and just drilled in the holes around the whole thing. Now you can see they're not perfect. So again, I might consider just punching them out individually all 3 times. So for me, edge work is one of the most important steps. Good edge work is going to elevate your project, whereas bad edge work, it's going to be just like stitching. It's going to be the first thing people are going to see and go, oh, there's a mistake. So I have a bench sander. That's what I'm using here. If you have a Dremel with a sanding disc, you can use that. Otherwise, just some 80, 120 grit sandpaper and some elbow grease. You'll go ahead and get those edges smoothed out. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get them flush and smooth. We want a good straight edge. We don't want any indents, and this is going to help when we go ahead and burnish the edge in a later step. All right, and if we look at these edges here, because I used the bench sander, what we have is there's a little bit of excess material, but we're gonna go ahead and get that with the beveler, so should be fine. What we're gonna do with this is called a saddle stitch. It's my favorite stitch. I use it on 95% of projects that I make. So for saddle stitch, we need a long piece of thread and 2 needles, one threaded on each side, and we are gonna feed the needles through. The important thing to remember here is that repetition. So what I do is left needle goes in first, right needle goes in second, in front of the left needle, and then pull straight. And I do that every single time. Left needle in first, right needle goes in front, pull through. And then once we go all the way around, we are going to snip that thread off, burn it at the end, and then without burning our fingers, we're just going to press that flat. That'll go ahead and seal the stitch. What I'm doing, like I said before, is we're going to go around the edges here with an edge beveler. And it's just a little tool with a gouge in it. And what it's going to do is knock off those edges. So as I'm going through, I'm getting off the edge along the whole project. We're going to do that front and back. So now we're going to take dye, the same black dye we used, and we're going to go around the whole edge of the project, getting all of the exposed parts. If you use the bench sander, one thing you want to be weary of is that the bench sander, if it's going fast enough, it can actually burn the leather as it's sanding down. You want to avoid that because if it burns it, the dye won't really take to it properly. Okay, once we've dyed the edges, we're going to want to burnish them. What I'm using here is toconol. You can use really anything, beeswax, water. I think there's some stuff called gum track that people use. Toconol is the best that I've used. So, and I just like to dip my finger in, go ahead and run it across the edge, make sure that I get good coating across it. And then you can use a slicker if you want. What I like to use is just regular old canvas. I just cut out little pieces and I use that to burnish the edges. What you want to remember is it's heat and friction, so you don't need to press down real hard, but you do want to make sure that you're giving it a good 10-15 passes. And then the final step that we're going to do here is we're going to add our top coats on. So I like to use a mix here of the first one that I use is leather balm with atom wax. So I will put down 1 or 2 coats of that. Oh, just what you want to do is just apply it. I'm using a paper towel here. You can use a dauber, a rag, whatever you want. You just want to be careful. See how it's pulling in. You want to avoid that. But I do want to just apply it across the whole top side, give it a chance to dry. So here I'm doing kind of 2 quick coats, but we want to give it a chance to dry, and then I'll come in with a rag and I'm just going to buff the top of it. And buffing the top of it gives it a nice semi-gloss look. So, and this is me buffing the edge. Apparently I missed the last bit where I added resist to it. So there's one final step after this. After I'm done buffing, I'm just going to add another coat of resist on top. Thanks for making it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do me a favor, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. If you have any ideas for future projects that you want to see, it can be kink related, it can be leather related, it can be Renaissance nerd fantasy related. I don't care. I'm willing to do all of it. That's all that stuff is right up my alley. Or if you have any feedback for how we can do things differently in the future, please let me know. Thanks again, and remember, everyone, stay barbaric.